So does the weather today remind you of your mind? The sun is shining, and then 2 minutes later it's snowing, and then it shines again, and then there's wind, and now there's more snow, and like this it's changing, isn't it? Yeah? And so to grab onto any state of the weather or any mental state is really useless, isn't it? Because it's in the process of changing and disintegrating in every moment, and then the gross change happens because of these, the subtle disintegration, and then we have some new weather and some new mental state. It's like that, isn't it? Yeah, just like that. So I wanted to just talk about some things about retreat before we get into the Bodhisattva ethical conduct. Because we're kind of in the middle of the retreat, and so sometimes in the middle then people go, oh, another day of this. and you kind of lose your enthusiasm. And I think there's a few things that's going on. One is that people start taking the retreat opportunity for granted. Because you have such a long period that it's like, well, if I waste some time here, I miss some sessions there, I space out here. It doesn't matter because tomorrow's going to be exactly the same. So we really take the opportunity for granted. And that's a terrible loss when we do, because it is a very precious opportunity. And that attitude is operating from the assumption that we're going to be alive at the end of the retreat. And we don't really know that, do we? Yeah, we have no idea if we're still going to be alive at the end of the retreat. And if we die before the retreat ends, what kind of mental state do we want to die in? Wouldn't it be more useful to really make use of this retreat opportunity while we have it? Instead of just assuming, well, yeah, I'll be here till the end of the retreat, and then next year I can do the same thing, and the year after that, and oh well. But to really appreciate the opportunity and take advantage and not take it for granted. I think that's really, really important. And if you really want to get the most out of the retreat, then have that exuberant, appreciative attitude, and then let that attitude motivate you, so that you every time you come to session, you feel so happy. Oh, I can come to session, yeah. Because there comes a tendency sometime in the middle of like, oh yeah, I really don't feel like going today. I'm sick. Our definition of sick starts to change, and it becomes, anytime I feel like the little bit tired, or a little something, well then automatically I'm sick. And so what I think is a good standard to use is, if you were working at a job where you're getting paid and where you only have certain number of sick days a year, is how you're feeling now sick enough that you would take a sick day at your job? Yeah? And to use that as something that would help you. Because we somehow, we're tired, but we find a way to go to work and work, on many days. Just because we know we only have a few sick days and we want to save them for when we're really sick. Yeah? And so to have that kind of mind, that, if I'm well enough to go to work, then I'm well enough to go to session. And if I'm sick enough to not go to work, then I better stay in bed. Yeah. So not just, I'm tired, or my last session was just so awful, I really don't want to go in. Or, my knees hurt, or I need a break. You know, I really need a break. I'm sitting in this meditation hall with the same people, eating lunch with the same, I need a break. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Look at the break you have right now. Look at the break. No? I mean, think about it. Most of the people who did the first month retreat with us, they're back working 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 right now. Yeah? And we need a break? Huh? So just, I mean, even think about the people who were here before, and, you know, they all have all their jobs and their families and their bills and the family problems and the health problem and this and that and the other thing. And, you know, and we just don't feel like going to session because whatever. Yeah? So really think about it and appreciate your opportunity. Because when we don't appreciate our opportunity, we're actually in some way creating the cause not to have this opportunity again. Yeah? You know, because how do we create the cause to have retreat opportunity in the future? By really doing, you know, appreciating our retreat and creating a lot of good karma now. But if we are missing sessions and just, oh, well, then we aren't creating the cause, are we? Yeah? And we're even, like even this lifetime, losing the opportunity to do retreat if we get stuck in that kind of mental state of, oh, well, you know, what a drag, you know. So really think about your fortune and, you know, think about what your friends are doing right now. Even what our other Dharma friends are doing right now. And remember that when we're doing retreat, you know, we're doing it for everybody's benefit. Yeah. So it's not really what I feel like doing. You know, when we've taken the Bodhisattva vows, we've given our life to sentient beings. You know, so of course we take care of our body. I'm not saying, you know, max yourself out till you fall over. That's ridiculous. Okay? But we've given our life already to the welfare of sentient beings. So you know, let's remember that and approach that in a you know, approach our opportunity in a very, very joyful way. Okay? Because who wants to live life without joy? You know? So we have a choice. We can be joyful or we can be miserable. And it's our choice. It's not the external world. You know, we can't control the situations we encounter, but we can control how we, you know, react to them. And I just remember Kansa Rinpoche when we went to Airway Heights. I think some of you were you there? And he went on to these guys who were in prison about what an incredible opportunity they have to do retreat. And he was talking about in Tibet what it was like after the communist invasion. And, you know, they would take the practitioners and just lock them up. And in fact, I knew one monk, and his family's house, because it was a nice house, got turned into a prison. And so he was incarcerated in what used to be his family's house, which was then turned into a prison. And he managed to do retreat. He couldn't move his lips, because if you were caught moving your lips saying mantra, you got beat. Yeah. And he couldn't, of course, have a mala. But he would just sit there all day, and he could calculate according to where the sun was, you know, how many mantras he had said. And he just did a lot of meditation, a lot of retreat that way. So Kansa Rinpoche was going on and on about, you know, this place is clean, and you have food, and you don't have to work, and you have a bed, and it's warm, and it's comfortable, and you have so much time, and you guys are like so fortunate. Yeah. So can you imagine what Kansa Rinpoche would say to us, and we're not even imprisoned? Yeah, the kind of fortune and opportunity we have. So it's very important to remember this. Very important. Okay? And when you do, then your mind becomes quite happy. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to talk about. And then another thing was, in your meditation, you're probably recognizing certain emotional habit patterns. Yeah, so, we might have a habit pattern of attachment or a habit pattern of anger. We've talked a lot about those. But then some people have a emotional habit pattern of anxiety. And I think they are so used to being anxious and to worrying that they don't even realize that they're anxious. They're so used to it that that's just their MO. Every situation is approached with, what's going to happen, or how am I going to perform, or am I going to cut the grade, or are people going to like me, or am I going to fail, or what's going to happen, or will I get what I want, or am I going to wind up in a ditch, or am I going to die, or, we all may have different things that we get anxious about. But some of us are just so, it's like a push-button response to any kind of thing that happens is, and then anxiety. And anxiety is a weird kind of thing. It's not quite like fear, because fear is usually regarding a specific thing. There's something specific fear usually, so often regards like a physical threat or something like that, a specific kind of incident. But anxiety can just be free-floating, and we can get anxious about you name it. And what's really tricky about it is we don't even realize that we're anxious, because we're just so used to thinking like this and having that undercurrent going on in our mind of, however your anxiety may appear. But then anxiety, if you look, in one way it's this loose amorphous thing. In another way, everything gets very narrow, because anxiety, is all about me. Isn't it? All about me. Even if we're anxious for the state of the world, what's going to happen to the world, it really means what's going to happen to me. If all these things in the world happen, what's going to happen to me? So anxiety is like this single-pointed concentration, very narrow kind of thing. And you can look, all of our afflictions are very narrow like that. Attachment, what I want. Anger, what they did to me. Yeah, so it's very narrow, and then it just stays there, and we get hooked and become quite miserable. And then we see the whole world through this framework of anxiety about what's going to happen to me. And then everything becomes so big, why is she giving this talk on anxiety? Maybe she's talking to me personally because I'm doing something wrong. Uh-oh.
How many of us think that?
Are you all thinking that?
No, she was talking about me, guys.
Yeah. And so everything is like, am I going to be able to eat the food? And oh, my little toe hurts today. I think I must have gout, or I must have leprosy, or my leg is going to fall off, or, kind of, I have I have some headache. I shouldn't use that example. Oh, my head's going to fall off. It's going to break. Everything's going to go wrong. Everything becomes so big. Just filled with worry. Every small thing. It's like, oh, she talked and she gave this pep talk about retreat, but I don't really feel that way, and oh no, what am I going to do? And oh, how am I going to do this? And I got to make it till the end of the retreat. And, and then the mind just goes crazy with all these proliferating thoughts that are about nothing except me. Yeah. But so if you see that your mind is going in that direction of anxiety, retreat is the perfect opportunity, that you have to really start working with that mental habit. It's like the perfect opportunity because you have so few distractions here. So you can see the anxiety very clearly. And when you notice it, you can start tracing it back. What was it that happened? Was there something in the external environment? Was it some thought that came in my mind? Was it some memory? Was it something that I smelled that reminded me of something that happened before? And this is the perfect opportunity to really look and see, okay, where did the anxiety come from? What sparked it? And then also to really investigate it when you're in the midst of it. It's like, well, what are the characteristics of anxiety? In other words, I say I'm anxious. How do I know that? What are the characteristics? How does it feel in my body? What's the flavor, or the taste, or the mood in my mind? In other words, what's the basis of designation of anxiety? How do I know I'm anxious? What are the things that are going on inside me that I call anxiety or anxious or whatever it is? And then watch the anxiety. And because, you can't hang on to it forever. Yeah, you do get distracted from your anxiety occasionally. So, it's like, well, where did it go? When the anxious thought is no longer there, where did it go? Yeah? Where does it go? And how does it feel, in my body and in my mind at this moment not to have anxiety? Yeah. And and then what are antidotes to anxiety? And I think one thing is that I do for anxiety is I just say, this is an adventure. Yeah? I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't control anything. And this is my adventure, and this is my play field for practicing the Dharma. Yeah? So let's get on with it. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, so no use getting anxious over it. This is an adventure. Yeah. So instead of, my little toe hurts, my little finger hurts, oh, I have a pimple here, that must mean that I have, some horrible disease, and, I'm going to die within the next 10 days. And how the mind just goes on and on. Yeah? And then just to say, well, okay, that's an adventure. I have some horrible disease, or, I'm just going to fall to bits, or, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, or whatever it is. Well, that's the latest adventure in this thing that we call life. it. Yeah? So whatever happens, it's just an adventure. That's it. And it's something to practice the Dharma with. So, yeah, so relax and go with it. And we have refuge in the three jewels. So we can take, we have something to call on to work with our mind no matter what happens. Yeah, we can't control what happens to our body, and we know we're going to die sometime. But we can work with our mind. Yeah, and we have refuge, and we've learned the Dharma tools. So aren't we fortunate? So instead of worrying about what's going to happen, let's develop these Dharma tools inside of ourselves. Yeah, and then practice them when different things come up.
Anxious and stress is something very new, no? In the world. I think it's like stress. Always are talking about the stress in anxious is like something in, I don't know, but in the past it was not so strong that.
Okay. So, so you're asking, or are stress and anxiety something new that people didn't have so much in the past? I think that, we all have the same minds no matter, thousands of years ago. So I think people probably got anxious before. But I think that the way our modern life is structured and the way, so the way the modern life is structured can lead to that. But I think often what we do is we look at the people around us and they're stressed, so we think I should be stressed. They're anxious, so I should be anxious. Yeah? So we look at other family members when we're little kids, and if they're like worried and anxious, then we figure, well, that's the way you are and the way you should live your life. And if they're stressed out from too much to do, then we pile too many things on ourselves and get stressed out because we think, well, that's the way, that's the way people did it. And we're kind of monkey see, monkey do. So it can be very helpful to look and like, okay, well, what patterns did I see around the people who I grew up with? Family members or neighbors or even my friends. And so how did I learn, because we learn so much of this. It's like you watch when little kids fall down, they look at their parents to figure out if they're supposed to cry or not. And if the parents go, oh, then the kid knows I'm supposed to cry. And if the parent ignores it, the kid just goes on. So often, unless they're really, really hurt, then they cry. But so much too, we just noticed how the people in our environment reacted to things, and we thought, well, that's how it's done. But this is the nice thing about being an adult, and the nice thing about practicing Dharma, is that we can look at these patterns and habits and say, that isn't a necessity, that isn't a done deal, that's the only way to react to a situation. That's just the way these people did it, and I can do it different. And I want to do it different. So then you go, because then retreat is just so precious to be able to work with these kind of mental habits and really try reacting, You get, anxious like, oh, maybe somebody's mad at me, they don't like me. And then you go, that's okay. Yeah. You're not saying, oh, it's okay that I hurt somebody's feelings. Because you're not worried about did you hurt somebody's feelings. You're worried about if they dislike you. Yeah. So if you're worried, then you say, well, they dislike me, that's okay. It is, really, isn't it? I mean, what's so bad? Somebody dislikes us, it could actually be good. You might become a little bit humbler and a little bit nicer. So instead of going, oh no, they dislike me, what did I do wrong? You know, it's like, oh, well, that's good. Yeah. Anyway, we can't control what they feel, can we? If we're sincerely sorry because we were rude and obnoxious, that's something else that we want to make amends for. But if we're just anxious because we're afraid of what people think about us, yeah. Then at lunch every day you can go, okay, what does everybody think about me? And everybody writes a note about what they think about you, you know, that day. And then every day, of course, what they think about you changes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, there's so many things that we can get anxious about. So, you know, but the Dharma is a real protection for us. And also, we need to be practical about things in our life. You know, if we're, if you don't have enough money to buy food, you don't say, oh, well, Dharma's going to protect me, you know. I mean, it's a different situation for monastics, but you know, say, oh well, then you become responsible and you go out and you get a job and you earn money and you get food. Yeah. So I'm not saying this thing of letting go of anxiety means that you don't care about what happens in your life and that you aren't responsible for yourself. Yeah. Because Dharma actually should make us more responsible. Because when you take the Bodhisattva vow, you've made yourself responsible for the benefit of all sentient beings. So we got to start with ourselves first. Yeah. How are we going to work for the benefit of all sentient beings if we can't take care of ourselves? So we have to be responsible in our lives. Yeah. But we can be responsible without being anxious. Okay? Good. Okay. So
Venerable, you wanted us to remind you on the 4 reliances.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I completely forgot. Okay. Yeah, so the 4 reliances. So this is really good because we were talking last time about people well, how about if we remind me again, because it fits in when we get to the 15th one. Okay? Yeah? So remind me there, and then I'll fit it in there. Okay? So I think we're on number 12 now? Yeah? Okay, so Shantideva says, diverting from consummate enlightenment, someone committed to Buddhahood. Okay? So the 12th transgression is causing someone to abandon the Mahayana. The object is anyone who strives to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. It may be somebody who has genuine bodhicitta, or someone like ourselves, perhaps, who has generated a form of bodhicitta, be it artificial, in other words, contrived, fabricated, and on that basis has taken the Bodhisattva vows. We are not to understand the expression committed to Buddhahood in the usual sense as referring to a person who has necessarily realized spontaneous bodhicitta and who is therefore a true bodhisattva. However, the object of the transgression must have the Bodhisattva vows. Okay? So we're diverting somebody who is interested, who has the Bodhisattva vows away from consummate, ultimate enlightenment. And even if the person, as we go through this, we should think, therefore, well, if this person hasn't taken the Bodhisattva vows, it's okay if I divert them. No. Okay? Even if somebody who hasn't taken the Bodhisattva vows, if it's somebody who's inclined towards the Mahayana, we should always encourage them. Okay? So next we consider the action. We make the transgression by telling someone who is striving to attain enlightenment, you had better give up. You're incapable of practicing the perfection, so you will never achieve enlightenment. Okay, it's far too difficult. There are too many living beings, and most of them will never listen to you anyway. You would be better off seeking your own happiness and individual liberation by practicing the hearer vehicle. Okay? So it can be by making that person lose confidence in themselves and their own ability. It can be by making them think that the path is too difficult, that they can't do it because the path is too hard. It can be by telling him that the result is too high, so it's just inattainable, unrealistic. Okay, so you have basis, path, and result here, discouraging somebody in any of those ways. Okay, and the action consists of speaking to followers of the Mahayana in a similar manner, and therefore discouraging them to the extent that they give up their aspiration to highest enlightenment. So you can see that's really something that's damaging, isn't it? It's harmful not only to that particular person, making them, abandon the Mahayana and abandon seeking Buddhahood, but it's harmful to all the people that they are capable of benefiting while they're on the path and after they attain enlightenment. Yeah, so it's not just damaging one person, it's damaging all the people who can benefit from that one person. Okay. The Great Way, Lama Tsongkhapa's text, raises the question of whether the transgression is complete the moment we say discouraging words to Mahayana practitioners, or whether in addition, as a result of what we say, they must actually abandon their aspiration. Based on an important commentary to the Bodhisattva way of life by an Indian master, whose name translates into Tibetan as Sherab Jungne, he concluded that the people must not only give up the aspiration to supreme enlightenment, they must henceforth put their hopes in the trainee vehicles, in other words, in the hearer and solitary realizer vehicles. So we say words, somebody who has the Bodhisattva vows, discouraging them, and then they turn away from the Mahayana and adopt the hearer solitary realizer vehicle. I wonder what happens if they just give up the Dharma altogether. That would be even worse. Although we are not likely to commit this misdeed, if we are not careful, we might come close to it. For example, we might be tempted to tell people who plan to attend a teaching on the Lam Rim that the instruction is far too elaborate and that they would be better off meditating on a deity and reciting mantras. Somebody who says that has no understanding of Tantra. Okay? But, this often is people's idea. Kind of, this understanding emptiness is too hard, let's just chant some mantra. Okay? With this kind of ill-considered remark, we could easily induce people who aim to achieve full enlightenment for the sake of all living beings to abandon their intention to study and practice the Lam Rim. So actually, whenever possible, we should encourage people in the Mahayana, because you see that, when you do something in the Mahayana, if you're able to progress along the path to enlightenment because of the virtue that you accumulate and the realizations you gain, one person's life becomes incredibly valuable and incredibly beneficial for so many sentient beings. Yeah? So, we certainly don't want to discourage anybody, but anybody we can possibly encourage, then let's do that. Yeah? Now, of course, you don't want to push people and make them uncomfortable and stuff like that, but you encourage. I remember when I went to Thailand in, I think it was '05, I went to Thailand. And so I was staying in a Thai monastery, and some of the younger monks would want to come talk to me, yeah, and they had lots of questions. They would ask about bodhicitta and so on and things like that, and so I felt like, ooh, I'm like, subterfuge. But actually, I don't think their master was adverse to it. He had great faith in Kuan Yin, and so I think he had some admiration for the Bodhisattva vehicle. But, I just tried to talk in favor of that. Yeah. Now, of course, there were some people that just didn't want to hear it and said, this is just unrealistic and impossible, and, tried to discourage me, but, I wasn't going to fall for it. So I just felt like, okay, if I can plant some seeds here, they might ripen, another lifetime for these people. Okay, then 13 is causing someone to completely give up the vows for individual liberation and enter the Mahayana. Okay, so the previous one was causing somebody in the Mahayana to either lose the Dharma or practice here in solitary realizer. Here you're telling somebody that, practicing, having the individual liberation precepts, like being a monastic or having the 5 precepts, is useless, and it's better you enter the Mahayana and just practice the Mahayana. Okay, so this again comes from people's ignorance, who think that Mahayana is something totally divorced from Vinaya practice. Which it's not. It's based on Vinaya practice. But there's a number of people who think, Vinaya, that's just for, those people, who just want self-liberation. But we're Mahayana practitioners and everything's empty, so we don't need these rules. A lot of people think like that. Okay, so this transgression consists of urging people to abandon their precepts for individual liberation. The object is a person who holds any category of vows for individual liberation, either the vows of ordination or a layperson's vows, and who observes them well. So in the in the pratimoksha, there's 8 types of pratimoksha vows. Okay, or 8 sets of ethical restraints. Okay, so 5 of them are for monastics and 3 of them are for lay people. The ones for lay people are the 5 lay precepts for men, 5 lay precepts for women. Okay, so somebody becomes an upasika or an upasaka, and then the 8 one-day vows. Okay, and then the 5 for monastics are male and female novice, the shikshamana for the women, and then male and female full ordination, bhikshu and bhikshuni. Okay, so somebody who has any of those. Okay, then the action consists of saying something to the effect of the following: what's the use of practicing the Vinaya? A far more effective way to purify yourself of the physical, verbal, and mental misdeeds that you have committed under the influence of your afflictions is simply generate bodhicitta and read the Mahayana scriptures. Okay, bodhicitta is so powerful to purify negativities. You don't need these liberation, individual liberation precepts. Yeah?
Does it include that if somebody is saying the Bodhisattva precepts are more important than the Vinaya?
If you're just saying the Bodhisattva precepts are, more important or are more difficult to keep or more advanced than the Vinaya, that's true. Okay? And that's not discouraging somebody from keeping the Vinaya, is it?
But from taking the Vinaya maybe has such a situation where somebody told me, oh no, it's more important to take the Bodhisattva, you don't need to do Vinayana.
Okay, so if somebody says it like that, it's more important to do the Bodhisattva, you don't need the Vinaya, then they're turning you away from that. Okay, so that would certainly fall under here. But if they're just in general saying the Bodhisattva vows are very important, that's not necessarily turning you away. Okay? Now, I should forewarn you, in the West, especially in the U.S., where it's a Protestant country, people don't have this much notion of monks and nuns, and even the people who grew up Catholic, the church is getting so much bad press these days, unfortunately. It's quite sad. Then you find people say, I've had people say to me, most monastics are just avoiding sexual intimacy because they have problems. Yeah? And I've heard people who are, Dharma teachers say that kind of thing. Or I've heard Dharma teachers, somebody's told me that some Dharma teachers have told them that, it's, we don't need monastics nowadays. It's just old-fashioned. Yeah, that was for the time of the Buddha, but we don't need that now. So, you find people saying all sorts of things. So, as people who are monastics, just don't listen to them because they're speaking out of their own ignorance. Okay? But definitely, we shouldn't be somebody who talks like that and says that kind of thing to other people. Okay? Because there's so much virtue from keeping the monastic vows, or keeping the 5 precepts, or the one-day precepts. There's so much virtue that comes from that. And that forms a basis upon which to take the Bodhisattva precepts and the Tantric precepts. Yeah, so it's really kind of getting things all upside down to say you don't need the Vinaya precepts and the Pratimoksha, and just, forget it all and practice the Mahayana. And that's really incorrect. Yeah? But just, if you're a monastic, just be aware that people say these kinds of things, and people say what people say, and let it go.
Away from the topic, but what kind of thoughts do they have when they say in the Western culture we don't need monastics, or we don't need Vinaya?
Okay, so when people are saying, oh, we don't need monastics, we don't need Vinaya, what's going on in their minds? I can't say. It's better that you ask them.
Well, maybe you heard something. Because I have heard this too.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't.
Yeah. I know in America there's a lot of lay people feel that monasticism is just about hierarchy and it's patriarchal. Yeah, and so we want to get rid of hierarchy, we want to get rid of patriarchy, so get rid of the Vinaya because then we're all equal. So I think that could be something going on in people's minds. It's better that you ask them, actually. Or, anybody else have some ideas? But, yeah.
A really good friend of mine speaks this way, and I can't remember what her spiritual tradition is called, but her teacher's a lay person. And I would tell her about things like even not drinking, and she said, oh, well, no, it's fine to have a little bit to drink. You just do it in moderation. That's extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day we were talking about monasticism years ago. And she said, and it's the same thing, it's what I want to do that makes me feel comfortable in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just that's extreme.
It's extreme, yeah. Right. Yeah, so, that's very good, that monasticism is too extreme. Yeah. That's like, yeah.
I couldn't do everything that I want to do when I want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, it's too extreme. Like, what's wrong with a little bit of wine, What's wrong with, this, that, and the other thing? So, yeah, it's just too extreme.
And
Yeah.
also in their system, they don't believe that you could take a lower rebirth. That if you're human, you're going to stay in the human realm, or in something else.
Yeah.
Going down to the animal realm is just not possible.
Yeah, yeah. So not really having awareness that ethical conduct is the cause of a good rebirth. Yeah.
And I'm remembering too, this path, I mean, that it's a mixture of like everything. So
Mm-hmm.
from here and
Yeah.
from here, and just sort of figuring it out.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, but I think even if people aren't following a specific path, just they look at the monastic lifestyle and they say it's too extreme. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think perhaps too is that without realizing that the Buddha taught everybody, both household and monastic, is that there's a possibility that they would say, well, monastics can't really relate to lay people.
Oh, yeah.
Children, they don't have responsibility.
Right.
They're difficult.
Right. Yes.
Someone who
Good point.
perhaps is more, has a perspective like you do.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
something I've heard in it.
Yeah. So another reason for people saying that would be because they feel that monastic life is just, you can't relate to people if you're a monastic. You don't have the same experience as them. You don't have a spouse. You don't have, a career, and the mortgage and the children. And so if you really want to benefit sentient beings, then you should be like everybody else so that you really understand their problems. Yeah. Yeah. And or sometimes you hear monastics saying, well, I can't relate to people. When I wear robes, I can't relate to people. And so somebody might say to a monastic, something like that. Well, you can't relate to people when you're in robes. It's like people don't know who you are. They can't talk to you. They can't relate to you. You can't relate to them because you haven't had their experience. Yeah. When actually, I find that wearing robes gives me the opportunity to meet so many people I would never normally meet when I'm out and about. Because so many people come up to you and they say, oh, what are you? And what do you believe? And then you have an open door to talk about kindness and loving, and love and compassion and forgiveness and everything like that. Hold on, John, you had something?
It's just, I guess, too, maybe because of a situation, although I know it's different, all the different Buddhist cultures, but in terms of the opportunities to actually really become deeply involved in the Buddhist teachings,
Mm-hmm.
both study and meditation, are very open for lay people also
Mm-hmm.
in their culture. So maybe people are thinking, well, you don't need to be a monastic to actually really, live the Dharma fully.
Right.
Which never really did too, but.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a very good point. That and traditionally, to have a lot of Dharma instructions and the opportunity to do retreat and so on, you usually had to be a monastic. Whereas nowadays, lay people, especially in the West, they're very interested in the Dharma and they're so eager and they're very good practitioners, and so there's no need to become a monastic in order to receive those teachings, or you just take time off work to do retreats, so you don't need that kind of lifestyle to have the opportunity to practice in a serious way. So many people could think that way. Yeah. Done it?
I wanted to say that I know somebody who's been more, not very long, he took long ago he took the road, and he's a psychologist, and he told me that he had in the beginning difficulties to wear the robe,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was an institution that many psychologists were working, and he had patients,
Mm-hmm.
and he was thinking maybe they will run away when he coming with the rope, but then he made this, he changed his mind and he went to the practice of the rope, and the people reacted very wonderful. They really were more open somehow, and then he later he got more and more good feedback to the and more patients who wanted to come to him.
That's interesting. Okay, so you knew somebody who was a psychologist who ordained, and he was initially very hesitant to go to his workplace because he was wearing robes and he was afraid that all the patients would like run away from him. But actually the exact opposite happened, and he was getting all this good feedback, and more people actually wanted to come talk to him. Yeah. And I think that that's because, I mean, again, it depends on the culture and the place, but people do have some kind of respect for people who are trying to live a religious life, you know, trying to explore their minds. Mm-hmm.
My experience, both when I decided to ordain, and actually even more so when my friend many years ago decided to ordain, was a surprising number of Dharma friends were very threatened.
Mm.
And I really think that it challenges our assumptions about our attachments to necessities. Especially in that Dharma environment.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I'm a good practitioner, we're all good practitioners, we're all Dharma friends here, and now this one is going way off the deep end by deciding to ordain, and it really threatens.
Yeah.
You know, our ideas about relationship are essential and all those things.
Okay. Yeah, so you're saying that when you ordained, you found that some of your Dharma friends who were old-time Dharma students with you felt very threatened by it, you know, kind of like, well, she's going way off the deep end, and why can't she just live a normal life? Yeah, why can't she just be normal, and you have all the opportunity to practice, and why do you need to do something extreme like this? Yeah, because it was in a way asking them, oh, she's doing that, why aren't I doing that? Yeah. I think another thing could be that some people have issues with organized religion, which I can well understand, you know, and then they identify monastics with organized religion. And I, for example, don't identify myself with organized religion at all. Yeah. And, you know, I'm just a practitioner because I see that there's value for my practice, for my spiritual practice in keeping the precepts, and because I want to live an ethical life. I don't have the precepts because I consider myself now part of an institution. Yeah. But then some people, as soon as they see you in robes, they say, oh, organized religion, institution, dogma, yeah, patriarchy, hierarchy, exclusion, yeah, whatever it is, corruption. Yeah, so they go to that. And that's understandable. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to be part of some dogmatic religious institution. Did you have something, Lorena?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I also was thinking it's quite kind of sad, but it's not really an emphasis on our culture to have, you know, your life be, you know, embody ethical conduct. And so I think people just don't understand maybe fully the impact and import of having pure ethics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that we don't really live in a culture nowadays that treasures ethical conduct. Yeah.
That's probably also why people who really have a lot of respect for monastics do, because it's so rare that someone...
Yeah, yeah. So the people who respect monastics have that value of ethical conduct. But a lot of people is just, you know, well, do whatever you can as long as you don't get caught. Yeah. And you kind of, I find it so interesting to watch the whole political thing. And all these people's ethical indiscretions are, you know, just all over the newspaper. And, you know, the voters are like, fine. You know, it's just, if I can just go off on a tangent here for a moment, but, you know, how do you say his last name? Gingrich? You know, so he cheated on his first wife to marry his second wife, and cheated on his second wife to marry his third wife. And then he's the favorite of the social conservatives in South Carolina. They voted for him. And it's like, it's like so mind-blowing because the way he's lived his life, in terms of marriage, is so the opposite of what they believe in, but they just went for it. It's very strange. Yeah. So, yeah, there's not a lot of... Yeah. Uh-huh.
Maybe, why do you become a monastic if you want to help people? If you want to help people, just get to work and
Right.
work and get with them, talk to them, not live up in the here and not talk with anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one that many people might think, if you really are committed to benefiting people, if you really want to practice bodhicitta, then go and do something in society to help people. Why are you going off there and, watching your belly button? Go do something. Yeah. Yeah, so many people could think that and think, that monastic life useless. Ken?
I was just going to say that with the politics, just as another side of that, is that at the same time, though, disillusionment with the political process is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
So I think there are also a lot of people who are looking at conduct and ethics and do see the value.
Mm-hmm.
Because most people don't vote anyway, and part of that is that disillusionment process. So the people who are in power represent the majority of the people who vote, not the majority of the people in the country.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah. 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 Okay. I didn't repeat that because I didn't want to go into politics too much. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, this is very good. So you can see why people might have that feeling. Yeah, and so, and you're going to hear all sorts of things as you go through your life. So you just have to be very clear in your own mind about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And our purpose isn't for people to like us. Our purpose is to benefit them.
And I do think, it's just so hugely misunderstood, even from my own growing understanding from being a lay doctor over the years, so part of, I feel like our opportunity is also educating.
Yeah.
To really share about what it means.
Okay. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about what monastic life means. Yeah. Very much. Very much. And people might also think, oh, you're so lonely. Yeah. You can be lonely. I remember when I was in India, when I went to get the material for my robes, one Indian man in the cloth shop said, oh, it's such a pity you're ordaining, some kind of, you're very attractive. Some man would like to marry you. It's like, oh, leave me alone. But yeah, but people really think, oh, that's kind of a waste. Oh, if you're young and attractive, what a waste to go off and be a monastic.
I had some feedback from some of my friends telling me that, everything I gave up, I'm going to be miserable. And it's very confusing to them that I'm happier.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So with some of your old friends, they were very concerned for you that you're going to be miserable because you're giving up all these things. Yeah. And yet you're happier and they don't understand it. Huh? Mm-hmm.
People when I say that I was going to come for 3 months, for 3 months, not for 3 months, and say, why don't you go to a spa? It's much better. You have to go there for 3 months in silence. For the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Go to a spa.
Yeah. You want to relax? Go to a spa. Why do you need to go? Okay, so where were we? So the Great Way explains that merely uttering such words is not enough to complete the transgression. Someone must follow our advice, actually give up observing the vows for individual liberation, and start reading Mahayana Sutras instead. If no one heeds our words, the fault is a secondary misdeed and not a major transgression. We must not confuse this misdeed with telling people that keeping the vows for individual liberation is insufficient and that they should generate the bodhicitta and meditate on the Mahayana teachings as well. This is kind of like your question, Donnie, because this is perfectly accurate. It is insufficient to keep the Vinaya vows. You know, we also need to learn the Mahayana and meditate on that. Okay? But that's different than encouraging somebody to give up their pratimoksha precepts. The transgression lies in asserting that observing the precepts for individual liberation is pointless and unnecessary, and that generating bodhicitta and reading Mahayana Sutras is largely adequate. Okay? Then 14 is maintaining the training vehicles. That refers to the here and solitary realizer vehicles. Do not allow the rejection of attachment and so forth, and inducing others to believe it as well. Okay? So the 14th major transgression is belittling either the here vehicle or the solitary realizer vehicle, or both, combined under the denomination of trainee vehicles. The object is therefore the teaching as realization of either or both of these vehicles. Okay, so we're getting into, you can see a lot in this thing. It's like having all sorts of wrong views about other people's practices, you know, and encouraging people to practice or to abandon their practice. Yeah. Okay, so the action consists of truly believing and asserting that no matter how long we may train in either the here or solitary realizer vehicles or both, we cannot eradicate all the afflictions. The view could be couched in these terms. Don't heed the here vehicle teaching. Don't instruct others in it. Just destroy it and put your faith in the great vehicle. Okay? Mahayana is so wonderful, and if you practice, you know, you're talking to somebody who wants to become an arhat. Anyway, if you practice here solitary realizer vehicle, you're never going to get anywhere. You can't even get to liberation. You can't abandon all your craving and attachment by practicing that. Mahayana is the one, the only. Everybody's got to become a Mahayanist. Sometimes you meet these people. They're kind of like born-again Mahayanists. Yeah. Oh, those people here, solitary realize, they're so selfish. They're just doing their own trip. Everybody should practice the Mahayana. They're not going to get anywhere. Okay, I've met people like that. Yeah. So, in the process, we may induce others to believe what we say, in which case, if they also have the Bodhisattva vows, they commit the same transgression. Okay, so we're influencing other people to have a bad view of the here and solitary realizer vehicle. Although Shantideva's lines includes the phrase, and inducing others to believe it as well, for the transgression to be effective, it is not necessary to have someone share our opinion. Just thinking like that ourselves. Okay, so how does this misdeed differ from the 6th transgression, rejecting the sacred Dharma? Okay, the present misdeed concerns the teachings of spiritual realization. Okay, whereas the previous one was the teachings of scriptural. So the realizational Dharma versus the scriptural or transmitted Dharma. Okay, so the present one, we deny that the practices of these paths allows us to rid ourselves of the afflictions. Okay, so we're saying that the realizations, you know, the realizational Dharma doesn't work for those vehicles. In the case of the sixth transgression, we deny the teachings in the form of scriptures by refusing to admit that the Buddha taught the scriptures of the hearer, the scriptures of the trainee vehicles, for example. Okay, so the sixth one is saying, oh, Buddha didn't teach that. This one is saying, oh, maybe Buddha taught it, but it doesn't work. Okay? Here we do not deny the scriptures as such, but the realizations that they allow us to achieve. We reject that idea that by practicing these teachings we are able to eradicate all of our afflictions. Okay? So somebody being so kind of, enamored with the Mahayana that they disparage the Shravaka path, Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha, here in solitary realizer path. Okay? And whereas, we have to realize that the Buddha taught all these different paths, all these different vehicles, because people have different inclinations, different aptitudes, different interests. Yeah, and so he taught different things so that people could find something that's going to be suitable for them. So these people, it's good if they go and attain arhatship, that's fantastic. If they have that kind of inclination, then fantastic. I mean, arhatship is something to be respected. Yeah, and then because we believe in one final vehicle, we say, eventually they'll enter the Mahayana. But, great if they practice the Arhat vehicle, encourage people. Yeah, rather than tell them like, oh, it's not necessary to practice and just give that up. Okay, because it doesn't work. That's not right. Okay? Okay. So you can see there's a lot of different views here that you can see that there must have been people who had these different kind of views, otherwise there wouldn't be precepts regarding it. Yeah? And so holding these kind of wrong views and then influencing others who practice in the wrong way. Yeah?
I have a very short commentary by Bodhisattva Narang, and he's saying that the 12th and the 11th
the what and the what?
The 12th and the 11th, both.
11th and 12th?
Yes.
Okay.
That they first more more deep, I think, when you not hold them, and and in the other way that they can develop very easy when you are not mindful enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then he's saying too, by most of the other ones, they can't, it's not so easy to break them, yeah, because we are not in the situation in the mostly.
Mm. Okay, so he was saying the 11th and the 12th ones.
Yes.
Were ones to be particularly careful about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
May the
Spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalaka Niryatayami. Due to this merit may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends.